Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to see so many of you already chatting around. Keith and Danny Hockenberger, thank you so much for already chatting in our live on the YouTube. If you're over on Facebook, I'm sure you're chatting too, but I can't see you because Facebook doesn't let me see that live without logging in, and that's too busy for me right now. This is the High Five. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things this morning that the changes in payments, and we're going to bring our expert in, Danny. Usually we have Brian Linke, but he is off being grandpa. We'll talk about that here in a second. But thanks for watching. It's time for the High Five. That's right, it's time for the High Five, but it's not the High Five if it's only me, because that would be like, a middle five. But we want to go high five, so let's get Mr. Danny Shard in there. How are you, Danny?
Good morning, Nate. It is not a middle five. Do the toughest, it's the high five. Happy Friday, High Five Nation. Good to see everybody.
I hope everybody grabs their coffee, gets going, we're excited to get this day going and have some excitement going on here. So let me pull our music down, get everything, going smoothly, as we can. And let's talk. This has been a crazy year. We'll start with this, Danny. A year ago, as the NBA shut down, March Madness got closed, people started putting in, the states all started having stay-at-home orders and all that. I'm getting notes that the music is still on. I don't see any music, but let me listen. I don't hear music going. Do you hear music going, Danny?
I do not.
It is not going through. I don't know why. I wonder if it's looping. Keith is telling us that it's annoying, which I imagine it is. So, Danny, I'm going to have you talk, switch over, and I'm going to get my other headsets on and listen to the actual stream and just try to fix this. But can you tell me where you were when you realized this pandemic was something that was real? Do you remember that last year?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I remember where I was. I was probably here at work because it was in March, and we had our March bonus promotion going on. Obviously, we're very busy that time of year, and there's just a lot going on. And usually, I'm on the 7 to 7 shift here in the month of March. I'll usually get in around 7 and leave around 7. So I was probably here. I do remember, doing our first high fives and kind of getting in this mode and being in that uncertainty of, wow, they're starting to shut things down. Things are not going to be the same for quite a while. And I just remember saying, whatever, right? This is gonna blow over in a month or so, or even a few weeks. They're not going to shut everything down, and boy, was I wrong. But it was kind of that first initial. It's starting to come down the pipeline, and I was not a believer. I remember sitting back and just saying, we're fine, we're good. And Matt Hoskins informed me otherwise. He has a keen ability to see a little more into the future better than I do, and he definitely saw that this is the real deal, and we're about to button down the hatches for a little while. So it was definitely an interesting time, and I cannot believe it's already been about a year since then. Gosh, it's flying by. I did not think that we would be here this fast anyway, right? I thought last year kind of crawled. My wife had a baby, and then we're already here in March. We're already almost done with the first quarter of 2021. It's crazy.
It is absolutely crazy, and music's gone, everybody says, so I'm glad. I don't know why it was repeating itself. It wasn't just YouTube or somebody grabbed it, so I appreciate you guys pointing that out. I mean, it has been a crazy year, and I think for me, I remember I was in Atlanta. We had just done a Transcend event. I was having, I remember all of us joking, we were fist bumping, but things weren't totally all like real yet. And yet I knew, and I was connected to some people at the CDC, that this was going to be something that people were going to start shutting down restaurants, and suddenly I was stuck, couldn't get anywhere. I literally wanted to fly home early because I was going to stay the weekend in Atlanta and have some Monday vendor meetings. Suddenly those vendor meetings were all gone. No one was going into the office. No one wanted to meet in person anymore. And I wanted to fly back early, and Delta wouldn't even fly me back early. I had to wait till Monday, and it was the weirdest flight home as I sat in this weird airport, everybody not really knowing what's going on. And that's what, but hey, we've made it through. We've done that. I mean, Danny, we're in 2 weeks. We're going to celebrate doing this show for a whole year. We've done it in a couple different
Crazy.
versions, but we brought this show on because we wanted one to connect with our partners. It's content for us to talk about. Earlier on in the pandemic, we did it 5 days a week. Now we do it 1 day a week. We're going to, I think, come back and do 2 days a week with a couple different versions. But it's a way for us to kind of give a virtual high five to all of our partners, tell them what we're going on. And this morning, I wanted to talk about kind of how changes in payments, because Brian Linky's not here, and I was like, okay, what can Danny and I really talk about? Well, Danny's the longest tenured payments professional in Payprotech, other than Matt Hoskins, and he's been doing it in for multiple companies, multiple places, and he's seen a lot. And I thought, let's think through what are the biggest changes we've seen in the last year, 5 years, decade in payments that is making an impact today. So I'm going to ask the first question, start long and then go short. What are the biggest changes in the last decade that you have seen in payments, Danny?
Gosh, I mean, I'm not going to go the easy route and talk about the elephant in the room there, and I'm gonna more talk about just the technology. I think is probably the biggest thing outside of some pricing changes that we've seen and some different approaches there. And the technology has just really leaps and bounds compared to where it was 5 years ago and compared to where it was 10 years ago. Right? It's night and day different. It's more affordable now for merchants to get into some of this more robust technology, these touch screens, these things that were, you had to be a high volume 6-figure merchant to even consider getting into some equipment like this because it was expensive and the ongoing support was expensive. So I'm gonna say the technology more than anything on the solution side has just really come along and advanced where we are today. And we've got to thank some of our competitors for that, right? You've heard us talk about it before. We talk about Square kind of being a driver and pushing the industry forward. And they've beat us in a lot of areas, and we've beat them in a lot of areas, right? But what they've done is they've helped us look at things through a different lens, and they've driven the technology forward as well, and our pricing conversations, and they've really changed the industry. And as much as you might have lost some deals to Square, you've probably taken them away as well. And I think they've been a huge help to driving this industry forward and where it is today.
Well, and I think, Danny, as we think about our competition, how they've not only pushed the technology, but they've changed how customer and merchant acquisition goes. I mean, Square
Right.
never had a sales team. They now have a few enterprise sales, but for the most part, they are a self-service acquisition. And that changed how you recruit partners and train partners, doesn't it? I mean, that's changed how we have to think about how our merchants are even able to accept credit cards. They can go online and sign up. They don't need the person walking in the door, and that changes how you sell, right?
That's right. That's right. And there's so obviously everybody marches to the beat of a different drum. So there's more and more business owners, I think, that have had that experience with more of an online concierge service or like a self-serve, like you said, Nate. And they want that in-person experience. They want that white glove experience you've probably heard us talk about. And that's only something that we can provide through programs like ours, right? And through programs like yours that you can offer directly to your merchants locally. It's just not something that these competitors are able to compete with. So although it might be a little bit easier with them being PayFacs, not dealing with sponsor banks, and no matter what you do and what volume you do, you're going to be approved and up and running in about 20 minutes. And that can be tough to compete with from an underwriting perspective and do some of that. But there is so much that merchants miss on this side of it, and I think that's where we're seeing a lot of merchants dropping off of those types of platforms and coming over, from things like Authorize.net and BigCommerce, from other PayFacs like Stripe, and then you've got your brick and mortar merchants with Square and coming over and getting some similar technology, similar pricing with a much better customer service experience. I think we're gonna really see a lot of this as we're already starting to coming over in our direction, and the other elephant in the room that I was talking about, things like cash discount, they definitely help drive that forward.
They have changed, and that is certainly something. I'll make sure to. We have lots of chatter going on, and I appreciate that, Alex and George. Jordan and Keith and Danny and going over here, and Keith over there tells us they need to pull that TV over a little bit, Danny. Just because it's they're all trying to watch the golf game, not us. That's it. But
It's the Players Championship week. It's an exciting week for me. I love the Players Championship down at TPC Sawgrass, and of course, it's in March, right? So I mean, we're busy. Like I said, I'm on the 7 to 7 shift, and I got to watch my golf. So you guys get to watch a little bit of it today behind me.
Oh, so when we think about those big changes like Square, certainly Toast has been, there's these competitors that we can't board on. They are PayFacs and or doing ISO relationships where it's not something that we can sell. We can't become resellers. They have maybe these mild referral programs where you can get a couple $100, but that's it. And even that you have to get approved in, and it's much more stringent. As that has happened, has that changed how new people come into payments? Like there may be people watching this that are just really new and just started out in the last year in payments. When people were starting out and didn't have Square and Toast and Stripe to compete against, has that changed how much opportunity there is, or just changed how you have to sell and who you're selling against?
I think it's a little bit of both, but yeah, I mean, more of the latter, right? It's how you sell, and putting a little bit more focus on that support. But there's been a lot of conversations around this, and the reality is that we always try to add value through our service, through simplified pricing structures, and through value adds, right? Whether it's point of sale equipment, additional features on the back ends, and I'm thinking things like our payment sub portal with virtual terminal and invoicing features and things like that. You weren't able to sell that 5 years ago, and you're going to be selling something much even more robust 5 years from now, right? But I think when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of it, I saw this post the other day on one of the Facebook groups, and bottom line is merchants just want something consistent. They want a good, reliable person or team that they can reach out to if they run into a problem. But more importantly, they want equipment and solutions that work, and they get their money consistently. And a lot of the rest of the stuff that we're talking about, the value adds that we're trying to bring, although they really help us add to the conversation, but there's a significant percentage of merchants that aren't really concerned about a lot of that stuff. And that's okay. We're going to still have that to talk about, and it still really, I think, puts us ahead of the competition in a lot of ways. Even if the merchants don't use a lot of the features and services that we're talking about that we see as valuable to them, that they're just not going to see. They really see merchant service providers as a commodity at this point, and they want good service and something that's reliable. And a smaller percentage of merchants are going to use a lot of these value adds, and more or not. But I think it helps us stand out as we're competing against those other providers that you mentioned.
So let's switch over like in the last decade. I think one of the biggest changes in the last decade also has been how companies like PayProtect do compensation for our sales partners and our wonderful independent sales offices that are across the U.S. That's gotten extremely competitive. It's still residuals, but there's a whole new piece of that, right? I mean, Danny, the competition and has pushed us to really offer incredible packages when it comes to compensation for our sales partners.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've got higher rev shares. It's something that I talk about every day, and it's like looking at those buy rates, right? Because whenever you see or hear of a compensation plan that sounds almost too good to be true, it usually is, right? There's usually some inflated buy rates, or they're padding something or adding some additional cost to the partner that justifies why they're able to give a higher split. But even on the more traditional type of setups, where we're seeing an increase in residual percentages, but more importantly, we're seeing an increase in those upfront bonuses, and they are massive, right? I mean, it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when we were doing a 200 upfront and an 8x true up to $1,000, and that was big, right? If you got $1,000 on a true up for a merchant account, that was huge. Now that was traditional pricing, well before things like cash discount and the increase in profitability that we see from programs like that. So to get a merchant that you could price high enough and still be competitive, where you were hopefully saving them money from their previous provider, adding value to them, and they were going to stick with that pricing, it was tough to get a merchant to get you get you a true up of 8 times that first month revenue and up to $1,000. Now look at these programs, and cash discounts and these types of pricing programs have driven this compensation forward, and the bonuses are massive. They're 5 and 10 times what they were just a few years ago. And I'm scared to say and scared to think where they're going to be 5 years from now. But whenever we see the increase in revenue from programs like this, you see these increase in bonuses, and accounts doing 40, 50, 60,000 and higher are capping out and getting $5 and $10,000 bonuses per mid. It's insane. And the compensation, I think, is just going to continue to get better as we continue driving forward.
Danny, when it comes to the increase of VARs, value-added resellers, that and in most cases for us, that's point of sale systems, software, people that were able to sell their products. That's increased a lot in the last decade. Why do you think that there's so many more VARs than there've ever been? And two, is that good or bad for the payment system, or indifferent? Like, what does that mean for our sales partners?
Yeah, I mean, I think as technology's gotten cheaper, we're seeing a lot of these software providers and anybody that has the ability to write some code, getting a lay of the landscape, if you will, from some competitors and saying, I can do that better, right? So, I mean, yeah, we're seeing these VARs and these POS providers popping up, and really software developers popping up everywhere. But we're also even hearing of merchants that are working with software providers to develop their own, and we just never heard of things like this before, right? So I think it's a good thing. It definitely drives the industry forward from a technology perspective. Everybody wants to be on the forefront of it, and one over here has thought of something that nobody else has, and they'll catch up. But so I think it's a good thing. But we also see a lot of these that are changing their models, and they're becoming PayFacs, like. And we talk about points and some of these. What did we just see, Nate? Lightspeed, I think.
Lightspeed bought Vend yesterday.
Lightspeed bought Vend. I think Keith had mentioned that. And then you've obviously got Toast and some of these others. But thinking of like Point has now become a PayFac, and they're going direct to merchants. And unfortunately, we're hearing about them approaching merchants that were brought on by ISOs and by sales organizations to come and move over direct to Point. And that's just. It's a terrible way to do business, and I think it's going to be a downfall of some of these companies that try to do that, because they're really going to bite the hand that fed them the entire time, right? And I think the core of this industry is and always will be outside sales offices and sales partners that are working directly with merchants every day, whether it's face-to-face or over the phone, and really driving these conversations forward and pushing out the best technology that's going to be a good fit for the merchant, as opposed to locking them in. So we're going to see a lot of that, and I think it's going to increase from here. But I do think it's going to help push our agenda for the vendors that we do work with that are going to stick to what they're good at, right? And that's continuing to drive their software forward, continuing to come up with better features and simpler ways for merchants to access and utilize their solutions without getting in the way of the payment processing, because they know that's our world, and we're going to let them do what they do.
I love where your mind goes, because that was exactly my next question, was about really in the last 5 years, I think, has been the movement of PayFacs, everybody jumping into these. And now we're seeing everybody thinks, hey, I want the exclusivity. And there is this movement to try to cut out the outside agents. And let's be honest, if someone can sell without giving you 50, 60% of the revenue, giving you huge bonuses, all that, the big businesses are going to do that. That's what they want to increase their revenue. And at the end of the day, they could, ultimately it's their revenue and their profit margin that's a piece. And that's why it's unique to have companies like PayProtect, where we're actually setting, our goal is not just helping merchants, it's helping sales partners help merchants. We're not direct to the consumer at all. We're not direct to merchant. That makes a big difference, right, Danny? That we're sitting here and saying, look, we're trying to figure out every day how to help payment entrepreneurs live their best life, build their best business, have the best portfolio, and be future proof.
Yeah, I mean, just like I'm saying about these VARs and POS providers that are becoming PayFacs, and they're kind of getting into the world that they're not familiar with and servicing merchants on the payment processing side. Where we're going to stick with what we're good at, and our POS vendors are going to stick with what they're good at. And what we're good at is bringing up programs and partnering with the right vendors and continuing to drive our partner program forward. We don't have inside sales. PayProtech is nothing without our sales partners, right? And that's the way it's always going to be. Our focus is partner driven and how we can better support, train, educate, and help our partners continue to grow their business. Because as your business grows, our business grows, and it's a real win-win.
All right. So agree or disagree with this statement. That in the last 5 years, customer support, merchant support, partner support has become 10 times more important to the success of our partners than it was 5 years ago. What do you think?
Absolutely agree, especially as the program solutions have changed. I mean, I'll talk about pricing for a second, right? I mean, it is, if you've been in this industry for more than 10 years, more than 5 years, really, you're just now starting to get familiar with flat rate pricing and the concept of it, right? Square introduced it. Nate, you'll tell me, but what, 2009 or 2008, whenever they
Yep.
came,
Yep.
when they came out, and it was foreign to all of us, and it still kind of is in many levels, right? Because how are they able to do it? But they're taking losses on some and making profits on others, and simplifying pricing structures and getting into that is something that is foreign to a lot of very experienced partners. How do you identify where to price merchants to ensure profitability and that you're not going to be taking a loss, but also that you're not gouging a merchant and pricing them too high? And you've got to look at statements and really identify that in a different way than what you've ever done before. So I think support, not just from the merchant's end, but to our partners' end, as a lot of this industry continues to evolve, we try to keep our ear to the ground as much as possible to help you and educate you as things are coming out. So I think it's been tenfold, and the partner support and merchant support and helping everybody as things continue to progress has been a major part of what we're doing and why we're so successful now.
So as we look, let's fast forward. We've seen so many changes the last decade. We've talked about technology. We've talked about pricing, PayFacs, vendors. All these things are changing. But let's fast forward now to this year, unlike any year that we've gone through really in the history of modern time. And that's amazingly, unfortunately, not hyperbole. And this has been a crazy year, yet our partners and PayProtech as a whole, we've held steady. So the first question I have is, what made that possible, that we've seen revenue increase? Most of our partners' residuals have stayed steady or increased. What caused that? Why are we so stable? And we know that there are some of our competition is not. What has caused PayProtech to be successful this year?
And obviously it's all with our partners, right? I think a big part of it is in this industry, all of us have, it's been ingrained into us that we need to constantly be able to pivot and identify, where we're going to be able to be successful and make adjustments to our business plans as things change. And of course, the curveball that we were thrown last year in March, none of us knew what to expect. And it put everybody on their heels for, 30 to 60 days on our side. We saw volume drop and production, slow down a decent amount because there was a lot of uncertainty. And I think every business saw that across the board. But it was eye-opening to see the tenacity of our partners and their ability to just think differently, think outside the box, think on your feet, really, and pivot your business models and approach merchants with a different concept. And I've said this to a lot of partners that, the coronavirus, we've been pushing the cash discount agenda now for almost 4 years. It's 4 years this year that we announced our program. And if those of you remember the old SaltShip Prime days, it's come a long way since then, and I'm really happy that it's called Edge. Thank you to Keith Sampson and Matt Hoskins for that. But with that being said, as we've continued to go forward here, the coronavirus really drove that program forward, right? And it did. So merchants were much more open to it. I mean, we're seeing well over 80% of our new account submissions are cash discount compared to where they were prior to the coronavirus. So I think that's helped our business, but it's also required you to think differently. And if you weren't pushing cash discount as much as you are now, if you look back, that was probably the driver, and it's only helped you from there. So things that have happened over the last year have really changed the game and driven it forward. And I think that cash discount is one of the major things of that.
It sounds sometimes like a broken record because that's what we say so
It is.
often, but
It
it's
is.
the reality of where we are at. And I don't know, I haven't seen recent numbers, and so, but I know in middle of the last year, estimations where we were around 7% of merchants were being set up as cash discount, and the guess was that that was going to increase to 15 or 20 percent. And I don't know if that's hit because all we know is our book, and we know our book is 80%. Now it's part of our focus and it's our connection to our partners. But also tell me about, like, because you talked about technology changing in your decade plus, but technology really focused, and even technology changes because it's a scramble to change your technology has been major this past year, correct? I mean, the online
Major.
ordering, the curbside, and what have you seen for our sales partners who quickly jumped onto that and used that to make it as part of their sales pitch, to jump on early to online ordering, jump on early to curbside pickup, to do e-commerce, to understand these things and be there, be the first to the market really to present that to merchants? What does that do for a sales partner to be part of that and see that change early?
I think you're probably starting to see the fruits of that labor now and going forward, right? You're going to be ahead of your competition. Now, granted, it probably made you want to beat your head against the wall there for a little while, especially if you were historically just setting up terminals, right? Processing was easier back then. We didn't have a lot of the features, and merchants actually learned to run their business separately. And the payment processing providers were really just that, providing the ability to accept payments at as cheap of a rate as possible. And here's a terminal. Good luck. Let me know if you don't get your money. And that was the essence of selling. So now there's just so much more to it. And if you were able to see that and hopefully kind of take on some of what we were saying of, working with companies like Applova and Custom App Build, and obviously our POS vendors that we work with Paradise and Hot Sauce, working on things like pay at the table and QR codes and online ordering capabilities. If you were able to kind of dive in head first and get knowledgeable on some of that so you could start pushing it out to merchants, now you're well versed in it and it's a part of your standard pitch. And I think that's massive, right? Because a majority of partners out there were not prepared or just chose not to take on that education and learn that and really pivot their sales approach. So kudos to you if you did that. If you haven't done that yet, jump on. It's never too late. But something that we all have to keep in mind as well, as we set merchants up with the best technology today, it's always important that we still stay in touch with those merchants. Even though a lot of these we try to have that are self-serve, these merchants can, click on support buttons on the screens of their point of sale systems. They can call into the POS vendor and get the assistance that they need. But you constantly staying in touch with them is extremely important because that technology is going to be outdated in 3 or 4 years, right? So you've got to make sure that you're staying up to date with these merchants and continuing to upgrade them as you see the technology changing. So I think this industry is going to continue to move faster and faster. The technology is going to continue to be more and more robust, and it's going to be on all of us to keep you educated and for you to educate yourself so that way you know what's coming down the pipeline and you can sell with it. If you don't get in front of it, you're going to kind of be left behind.
All right, let's wrap up with this. So we've talked about changes in the decade, 5 years, 1 year, and certainly the only thing we know is change is constant. And so, though we're not prognosticators, let's try to put our future hat on for a second. And what are we see some things coming down the pipeline? I'll start with a couple of ones I know you probably won't mention. I'll start this. I'm watching right now. Square went out and buys Tidal. Tidal is Jay-Z's music company. So what's a Square POS company going out and buying a music? It's because I think they've realized, whether it's Dorsey or some of the other execs at Square, is that vertical specific payment solutions is going to be extremely important. And they're going to build a platform for independent artists to be able to monetize their music and bring money to it. And they're going to be the ones processing those dollars. I think that's their game and play. It wasn't just because they wanted high quality music to be able to streaming to our ears, and they're not looking to collect the money at $14.99 a month or whatever the streaming. It was more of a play of there's 6 million artists in the U.S. and 150 million independent artists across the world that are looking for a way to monetize, and they're going to try to figure that out. And I think as we go to payments, there are going to be more and more businesses that are thinking this way. And how do you how do you compete in that world? Because we're going to see this continued consolidation and unique merging of payments and other businesses. Danny, what are some things you're thinking about when it comes to the future proofing that we're just watching, and we'll make sure our partners are ready when it really affects us?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, we're going to see a lot of mergers. We're going to see a lot of changes in technology, like I've talked about. But I think a lot of the pricing that we're seeing is just going to continue to evolve. One of the things that I think we're going to really see over the next several years is more and more merchants looking to basically partner up with their sales partner, right? We've got several now that the merchant is more or less becoming an affiliate partner, and not only getting a little bit of a kickback on their business, but also referring other merchants. So I think that's something that we're going to see more and more of, because merchants are smarter, right? Over the last decade and even 20 years, as payment processing has more or less been shoved in their face. It's a constant right in front of them. They're getting pitched every single pitch that has ever been made out there. These businesses have had it, right? So what that's done is that creates a very educated merchant, educated business owner in our business, right? A lot of these merchants that have been in business for some time are just as educated as we are on pricing and solutions and what's available out there. And boy, do they know how to negotiate, right? So we're going to see a lot of this continue to progress in that direction. And you can kind of get in front of it as well. Start partnering with your merchants. Use them as a referral source, maybe even give them a little kickback on their business, especially when they're doing programs like Cash Discount. And that's also going to help you future-proof your business. If your merchants are making a little bit of that on the back end for referring other merchants and things like that, you're going to see a lot of them stick with you regardless of that competition.
And the other thing I think we're watching, and this is where everybody's going to pay attention. And I see.
Can hear you, Nate.
Oops, sorry. I'd muted myself because I had to take a little sip of coffee and didn't want you guys to hear that. One of the things I think Ruben was saying, we mentioned that just a few moments ago, that Vend was acquired by Lightspeed. But what that consolidation of payments and the internationalization of payments is going to be a big change. And I think people have to pay attention to what the blockchain is going to do. And so whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum, it's something that I spend a lot of time trying to analyze and making sure that we're ready for that. It's not affecting us now, but in the next 5 years, it is going to, and you're going to have to be ready. And there are some of our POS systems right now that are figuring out ways to be able to accept Bitcoin, and Square is already way ahead of us on that. And so it's something that we're going to have to pay attention to, because that's going to democratize how payments are done across the world, and it's going to change how it's done locally eventually. So it's going to hit Wichita, Kansas. It's not there yet, but it's going to. Sorry to pick on you, Wichita. All right, Danny, here we go. Let's finish this up with our closing comments. Let me bring a little music up. Hopefully it doesn't blow everyone's ears out. I apologize for that earlier. I don't know what the problem is, so hopefully this doesn't loop. Closing remarks. I mean, Brian Linky's not here, so let's put our Brian on. Happy he's being grandpa. He is with his grandbaby, which I'm so happy for him. That's a great reason not to be here. But let's put what do we say to our partners to celebrate as we say, hey, we want to party like it's 2019. Because let's go, but we're moving forward. What do we say, Danny?
Yeah, shout out to our counterpoint, Brian Linky. We always miss him. But how cool is it that he's out there holding his first grandbaby, little Zoe Linky. So he's definitely in a happy place, and we couldn't be more proud of him. So shout out to you, Brian. Hope you're having a good time there. To all of our partners, it's shocking, but Monday marks the halfway point of our March bonus promotion, and it's already going by fast. As it stands right now, we're looking to have a record-breaking month for ever doing this promotion. So you guys are really keeping us busy. I had to stay seated for the high five this time because I'm tired. I'm worn out, but I'm still going strong. So just keep us posted. Anything that we can do to help you achieve your goals this month, we want to do it. So reach out, and we're already halfway through, so take advantage if you can.
All right, and on that, I say thank you guys for watching. We'll be back next week. We're excited about where PayProtech is going, where payments is. It's never been better to be in the payments industry. This is the best time, and we're here to help. Just call and ask. We're anytime. I spent 2 hours with 2 different partners yesterday just brainstorming ideas with people. That's what we're here to do. We can't always do 2 hours. Sorry, you can't. I'd never talk and do anything else, but we're here for you. We say high five. Thank you, Danny. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great one.
High five.